Okay, all right, so it is 7:05, 7:02, and I'm going to call the Tax Relief Evaluation Task Force together. So, I'm Wendy Ravelli, I am the Select Board Liaison, and you will see me at all these meetings in the future. But first and foremost, I want to thank all of you for coming and volunteering for this committee, and I think some of us spoke earlier. The good news is it's a task force, so it has sort of a shorter duration. The challenge, however, this is going to be a very complex task for all of you to look into. There's a lot of tentacles and a lot of things to evaluate. So, but it should be very rewarding digging into that, and you're all very skilled. So I think you're all working really well together. Before we get started, I actually just want to take a moment to touch base on two things, one of which someone raised to me as a member, and it has to do with conflict of interest. And I just want to note that all of us, as it relates to the real estate tax exemption, are impacted financially, either positively or negatively. So just want to acknowledge that. But in terms of it being a conflict of interest, it's not for this group. I want you to recall that in the charter, the focus of this committee is to look at and find a way to model and help evaluate the RTE, and specifically the goals behind the RTE that the Select Board set out. So you're not here to make a decision on should we proceed with the RTE or not. You're really helping evaluate how we can help the community understand the benefits and whether the goals from the Select Board are being met. So that's really your charge. Second, I just want to acknowledge there's been a lot of interest in the formation of this committee, if you will, and a lot of people are sort of wondering what each of our individual interests are around the RTE. So when we go around the room today, when we'll start introductions, I'd like to, if you're all willing, to sort of speak to your own interest in the real estate tax exemption and your own perspective on it, if you're willing to share that. So if you're comfortable with that, because we all want to know where we're coming from. All right, so with that, I think we'll start first on our agenda, our introduction. So I'd like to ask everyone to sort of just go around the room, help each other understand our own background. Talk, if you can, speak a little bit to your own professional background and the skills that you bring, and whether you've been on any town committees or either private organizations, and basically what kind of committee type work you might have been on. And then lastly, your interest in the RTE. So, sound good? Okay, I'll turn it over. Just go around.
I'm Rich Feely. I am president of the Concord Housing Foundation. My interest is that of the foundation in seeing Concord affordable across the income spectrum. And my personal concern is it has become less so in the 25 years that I've lived here. My professional background, I have a law degree. I worked in state government and local government for 10 years, and consulting for 10 years, and 25 years in academia. My statement of conflict of interest, yes, my wife and I benefit at the moment from the residential tax exemption. We live in Prescott Morehouse, which those of you who know it is the big white house next to Orchard House. It's not one house, it's 4 condos. I'm not saying we can't carry the taxes now, but if I weren't there, my wife, who's a retired teacher, would have a problem. So that's my statement.
Great. Hi, I'm Lynn Salinger, a resident of Concord for almost 40 years now. And during that time, had a 40-year career as an international development economist. So my background is in econ, is in data, but mostly in Africa and Asia. So not local housing markets for sure. I have served on a number of committees, Finance Committee first for 6 years, and then was on the board of the Municipal Light Plant. So I'm familiar to some extent with the way committees work. I have not been on a committee in Concord for probably 5 years now. I'm retired. My husband and I live in West Concord, right next to Thoreau School, and we currently benefit from the tax exemption, but I will say that I am fairly agnostic on it and have a lot to learn about how it works and how many people take advantage of it, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm here in part to contribute, but also in part to learn.
I guess I should add on your question about committee participation. I was on the 2229 Main Street Task Force, which is effectively disbanded. I am on the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust.
Great, thanks.
Hi, I'm Shannon Sweeney. I've lived in Concord since 2019, and this is my first town committee. I served as the president of Concord Family Network. I was the past president of Concord Children's Center, and now still serve on the board. I live in West Concord. I'm also on a private company board, Huber Engineered Materials, which is an agriculture and specialty minerals company, privately held business. And I am an evaluation researcher in social services, so I'm a health services researcher. I work for an Oregon Health Science University and do public health research for them. I have a PhD in essentially mixed methods evaluation research with an emphasis in public health, so housing is a bit outside the traditional public health discipline, but we do a lot of work around housing because obviously it's one of the social determinants of health, and I'm on a Medicaid evaluation for the state of Washington as my day job, and so they've expanded their waiver. A waiver in Washington state has allowed supportive housing and supportive employment to use Medicaid dollars currently. So I was just really interested in doing something in town, and I figured I could maybe try to use some of my evaluation information to this particular task force, and I live in West Concord.
John Piper.
Can I just comment on one thing? We are on Zoom, and so it's going to help to keep the mics near. I'm not saying you have to talk into them, but don't get too far away from them. That's all. So thanks. Sorry, John.
John Piper, pretty much a lifelong resident of Concord. Grew up here, went to the public schools, moved back here with my family in 2025 or something like that. 2026, been a while. Something like that. Yeah. Oh, no, 2006. Yeah, we're moving the future. Yeah, exactly. I'm getting excited. No, but about 2006. Sorry. So it's been a while. Have not served on any town committees before. I somehow bobbed and weaved that. But looking forward to being involved here. In terms of my background, professionally, have been a management consultant for years, decades. Was a partner at a global management consulting firm. And look forward to getting involved here and really trying to establish the best, a good set of criteria to make sure that we're getting from the RT what we're hoping to get from the RT. I'm a firm believer in making sure that Concord continues to be a diverse community, and affordable housing plays an important role in that. So look forward to getting involved here.
Great.
So.
Abby, I know you just got here. We're just doing some introductions for get to know everybody. So.
I'm Ellen Quackenbush, and I can't believe it. I've lived here since 1978, and I have watched this town go from, when I was married, I lived on Strawberry Hill Road next to a prison guard and chicken farm, and it's changed a lot. It used to be very affordable, it's not. And so my passion on it is to maintain some of the diversity in town. I think it's really what makes the town character really special. And yet, I don't think you can hold the dam of house prices. So it's how do we figure this one out? I've served in a lot of town committees in terms of including the light plant, the personnel board, and currently on the transportation advisory committee. So I kind of know some of the ins and outs in committees. In terms of my background, I have a degree in economics and a graduate MBA from MIT in data analytics. And so I'm really like combining qualitative and quantitative data. And I think the data is going to tell us something. But I think we need to go out and hear stories, because I think that people don't move based on their taxes. They move based on life events, and then the taxes become an issue. So I think that, ability to talk to people and think of like, what are the cohorts of people that live in town, where they live, what might happen that makes them decide, I can't afford to live here or move here, or I can't afford to stay here. So I think this is as much a kind of a data analytics and storytelling event.
I'm Kathy O'Neill. I've lived in Concord over 20 years. We moved here right after we got married and had some kids, and we've been here ever since. I'm a CFO of a mid-sized business media company, so I do a lot of analysis and preparation and, financial stuff. I have not been on a committee before, but it's something that I've wanted to do, and this is the perfect opportunity for me to get involved. I'm definitely interested in the RTE, trying to understand why, if it's the right tool, what is it accomplishing the goals that we want? And I agree, the data's gonna show us, and people are gonna show us, and it's gonna be an interesting, something. I'm very interested in all this, so.
Meredith, yes.
I'm Meredith Stone, I'm the town assessor. I'm the president of the Essex County Assessors Association. I have been involved in education for assessing for over 8 years in the Essex County, as well as now starting Middlesex County. I am tasked at implementing the residential exemption and giving the explanation so you make the best choices for yourselves. I do not live in Concord, so I have no means into it.
And I'm Abby Gorell White, I put that in there, so the Gorell family, my family's lived here since '78. So I grew up, one neighborhood, I've since lived in 2 others in Concord, so I've had some different experiences. I've raised my 3 kids here in the public schools.
You're sharing mic, so.
Oh, sorry, thanks. Okay, sorry, so I'm Abby Gorell White, just grew up in Concord and my family's been in town as business owners and residents since 1978. I have raised, is this not a good mic?
But no, either one's fine.
Okay,
but
okay.
both of you'll need to talk.
So,
Yeah.
my kids have been in the public schools here, and I, in the past, well, it's been over 10 years in Concord, but we were in Lincoln prior to for a couple of years. So for the past really 15 plus years, I've been in residential real estate in Concord and the vicinity. So I get to see clients and residents move in and out of town and sort of what that transactionally looks like for them. Also, lots and lots of stories of why they come to Concord or why they leave Concord. So I think I'll be able to add quite a bit in that realm, both from my client base, but I'm also very closely tied into, I work for Landvest, which is right in town here, but also across New England. And so we collaborate as a sales team across all different markets across New England. And then I also collaborate with local brokers in the Boston area out here to Concord and out to Western Mass. So get to see quite a bit of what is happening transactionally for people and what is their story, but not just with Landvest, with with all different types. Because as I'm advising, I'm also finding out how that compares to other home transactions and the whys. So I think it'll be interesting to see from from the collaborative efforts what we can collect for data. I think the data is really, really important. I'm very math, science driven, so data is very important. So, well, happy to be here.
That's fantastic.
And it is my first time on an official committee. I've done some other things for the town, but first time.
Great. Great. Well, thank you all for sharing. We certainly have a lot of analytic minds at this table. So no doubt we're going to come up with a right approach to this problem. So, so the next item on our agenda is for selection of a chair and for a clerk for the committee. And I sent you out all sort of the standard town clerk's explanation of what the chair and what the clerk should do. The chair, as you might expect, is going to organize the agenda for meetings, help schedule meetings, facilitate meetings, et cetera. I wanted to comment a little specifically about the clerk role, which if you read the town clerk's instructions, the clerk is the one who takes the minutes of all the meetings and gets them submitted and facilitates the review. I just wanted to comment that nobody likes writing minutes, and I just want to share from a best practice and a lot of committees that I've seen that minutes taking is very effective when you share the responsibility, so it can move from member to member. But then the clerk, what I've seen work well is have the clerk sort of keep track of who's writing the minutes. The clerk be the person who receives the first draft of the minutes, does reviews, revisions, and then sends them out to the committee. And then the committee takes feedback on them. The clerk will revise as needed and then get it submitted to the town clerk. It's just, it's an easier balance of the activity across the whole committee. So keep that in mind when we think about who might be a clerk or chair. So just want to comment on that.
Question,
Yes.
point of clarification, please. My recollection from Finance Committee was we evolved in our thinking about minutes, about note-taking, and we went from a practice that tried to record almost verbatim everything that was said in a meeting versus something that became a bit more summary in its approach. Is there
Happy
an
medium.
attitude about this now
Yes,
in
absolutely
town?
not. It's not a dictation. I think what you want in the minutes are a quick summary of the topic and any key decisions that are made, clearly any votes that are taken, what was the overall vote? So, and obviously any action items from there. So, yes, just highlight. I like to think of them as highlights, but enough so someone can go back and say, oh yeah, I got the gist of what happened in the minutes. But yeah,
Thanks.
no, good question. So. Okay, well, so I'm going to ask members of this group if there's anyone who might be interested in serving as chair. I knew this was going to happen.
Everybody sits on their hands.
I know. I know. All right, well, I don't see anybody jumping at the mic, but would anyone like to consider nominating someone else based on the experience that they've heard here tonight? I can also say that there is an experience where people could co-chair. So I'll just throw that out there if someone's really struggling with that idea. Come on. No? You don't want me to nominate somebody. Could I ask someone to serve as chair for tonight's meeting? For starters, we need someone to chair. Lynn, would you like to be chair for this evening? Or would you consider being chair for the
I
committee?
would consider for this evening.
For this evening?
Yeah.
Okay. That would be for this evening. Then the part of the challenge is we do need to get a chair assigned to the committee. Ideally, it would be tonight, so you should all think about that. But if you could serve as chair tonight, that would be great.
I will say that my personal life is such that I'm reluctant to take that on as
Yep.
a
Fair.
regular commitment.
Okay. Okay, so we could start with that tonight. Can I, so you can start from here, and would you like to sort of start, the next step is trying to find a clerk for the committee.
So
It's a little less.
I was intrigued by your concept of rotating responsibility for minutes,
Yes.
for recording notes, and then rotating the responsibility for the first draft.
Yes.
And then the clerk finesses that draft into something that is distributable.
Right.
So with that, does anyone moved?
Well, I would be willing to do it. The problem is, nobody can read my handwriting, even my wife. But I would be willing to do it, and then obviously somebody else needs to do it in the times that I can't attend. I was the clerk for the 2229 Main Street Task Force, and I perversely actually sort of enjoyed it because it made me digest what went on at the meeting. So I'll volunteer, and I certainly, I'm sure we'll all miss a couple of meetings, and I'm happy to work with somebody else's notes, but they wouldn't want to work with mine.
But no one's going to be reading your notes, if I understand correctly. You
Yeah,
would
so
be
the idea would be
providing.
that you'd draft, what we'd share is, there'd be a different person taking the minute, drafting the first cut of the minutes for each meeting, and the clerk would sort of receive that first draft and edit, and then distribute to the committee for review and then approval, whatever subsequent meeting there
And is it fair to say that those would be electronic copies
Yeah,
of
I
drafts
absolutely think
and-
they'd be electronic.
Yeah,
That's what the Transportation Advisory Committee does, because I find it hard to pay
Right.
attention in a meeting if I'm always taking notes.
Right, and keep
But
in mind,
taking
yeah,
notes is something I'd be happy to do on a
Right.
rotating basis.
But the idea being, you draft the minutes. You'd have a rotating responsibility for drafting minutes. I will say that.
Drafting means taking your notes and
means-
putting
right,
them.
yeah.
Or
To work.
coming in with a piece, you know.
Or coming
Right,
in with
right.
your PC.
I mean,
that's right.
sometimes, what I've often done is just take the agenda, take notes underneath each bullet point.
Is this being taped so that whoever
Yeah, so that's the
does do
next
it
what I'm
can
going to
always
say.
go back
So
and see if,
Yeah, exactly.
the intention is you
we
will,
missed that or
yeah,
whatever.
we will have a Zoom call. So there'll be an AI summary of it, which I'm going to tell you should not use for your minutes because they're not
Well,
reliable, but they are a good, typically good
And they usually is like
chronology.
an AI transcript, and the
Yep, that's what I'm
transcript is
talking
better.
about.
So there's like usually like an AI transcript, which
Yep.
is decent, and then this AI summary like summarizes the transcript. The summary I find not very helpful. I do qualitative interviews, and we get them transcribed professionally for a living, and so,
Yeah.
but the
You get a full text
yeah, the
transcript.
text when you know what you're talking about and you were there, it's actually quite
Yeah.
helpful.
Can any committee get that?
Yes.
If you use Zoom,
If
it
you
should
get a
auto do
Zoom,
it, yeah.
if someone sends you the recording, you
Okay.
see the visual and it's streaming.
So you can
on
like
the side.
download the audio video and you can download the transcript part underneath it, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, you didn't know that.
Obviously.
So, yeah. So, I'm sorry, Lynn.
So, Rich, you have volunteered to take someone's draft and polish it for distribution
yeah,
to the
and
group.
do my share of
Additions.
Yeah, I mean, particularly since we have a record of it, you know, I think, you know, that's great that we can share. And when somebody's notes aren't clear, you can go back and look at what was actually said. Yeah, I mean, I would be willing to do that.
Do we want to vote on this position?
Sure.
All in favor of Rich taking on the clerk responsibility
With rotating minute takers.
with rotating
Rotating
minute
note
minute
takers.
takers? Thank you. All, the vote being unanimous, I do so declare.
See, it comes back quick,
It
doesn't it, Lynn?
does, oh my goodness. So the way the agenda is set up, we are first to understand the charge from the select board, Wendy, and then I think we're going to hear from Meredith on more specifics of how things work.
Yep.
So Wendy, I'll turn it over to you.
Sure, sure. Now, I know you've all gotten the charge and you've read the charge, so I'm not going to go through it verbatim. There's just a couple things that I really want to highlight in this charge, and I don't know if Andrea's good. She's got a good prompt. So I just want to point out a few things. In the background purpose section, we stated in italics, I don't know if you can see it over there, but I'll read it out loud. The goal behind the RTE was to support economic diversity and allow elderly residents to continue living in Concord. Excuse me. So part of the goal of this committee, as I mentioned earlier, was really to start looking at and building sort of a model that will help us evaluate whether that goal is actually being achieved through the RTE. And we acknowledge as a select board that it takes a little time, might take a couple of years for this to play out, but what we're looking for is sort of a model to help measure. How could we measure whether that goal has been achieved? And as you look in the charge, there's some responsibilities under the task force. First and foremost, it is about evaluating the benefits of the RTE. That's the predominant responsibility of the task force. I might sneak in the word committee once in a while, sorry. And secondly, at the time that the select board approved this, at least in this last year, we also made a commitment to make sure that we were going to look at all possible other mechanisms for tax relief for the community. And as Meredith will go through, the community has actually implemented almost all the tax relief measures that we possibly can. But there are a couple others that we want to look at, and Meredith will actually help us look at the existing ones that we have in a little bit, and then I'll talk just very briefly on some of the others. But as we look at trying to build this model for evaluating the RTE, there's a lot of things that we need to look at, and as you read this, you realize that's why this is going to be so hard and challenging, right? That we really need to look and see if there's a way to quantify the effects of of adopting the exemption, and not just on residents, but landlords, developers, and obviously from there's mention of the impact on renters, which is going to be hard to quantify. And so when we were looking at committee composition, we were looking to see if we had a landlord that could help us, but we don't have a landlord necessarily here, but through your resources, I'm sure we can touch base and see what impacts there are on landlords, and therefore there may be indirect impacts on renters there. We also, obviously, we want to try to characterize the fairness, the benefits, and also the hardships that might have been created through the RTE, some cases. Looking at trends in real estate is clearly something we want to look at. Can we actually measure if people have been able to stay in their homes or not? We may not be able to do that, but we need to try, see what we can find out. Another impact of potentially on the RTE is impacts on other relief programs that we have today. There is, through the Hugh Cargill Trust, relief for some tax relief that's offered to our residents. Maybe the real estate tax exemption has impacted that program and fewer people are getting exemptions. Or maybe there's more requests for tax relief through that program. That's another venue we could look at. We did not, I'm not clear how other towns evaluate their real estate tax exemption, but that might also be something to look at. We have our own goals, other towns have different goals, but it's worth looking at, understanding if they even evaluate it. And so there's those, and then these other, the other tax relief programs that we have, there's 3 that are bulleted here. The first one, we have a 41C program, which Meredith is going to go through in detail. There was a prior group wanted to look at a version of that we could implement. It's called 41C and a half. The ask of this committee is to look at that and see if it's worth implementing that. With 41C and 41C and a half, it's an either or. You can't do both. You do one or you do the other. And I'm not the expert, Meredith will tell you more. The second bullet speaks to our existing senior means tested program. Now, most of the programs that we offer are really by state statute, but under the senior means tax exemption, one of the parameters that the town of Concord sets is the asset limit that's there. And so one question was whether that limit that has been set, is it too low? Is it too high? Maybe it's too high, then no one can get that exemption. So is there something else there that we might be able to tweak that could help our seniors? And lastly, this third bullet speaks to a new tax exemption program that's being provided by the state. And it's primarily geared toward residential property owners that are landlords and offering rental property. So the idea being, if there's a landlord that's offering a full-time rental property at affordable rates, there might be an opportunity to offer that property owner a tax exemption. It's getting to that issue of renters and are they impacted in some way? Is this another alternative that we could look at and evaluate? So that's the nature of that program. So when you start, as a committee, starting to looking at these things, you might want to break off some people, look at these separately. It's on the list. It's another thing to look at. And so in general, so the expectation for the deliverables for this committee, what we set out was for a report a year from now. You might decide that you want to do more than that, less than that. But we did set up a sort of an interim reporting request back to the select board to just give us a progress update on what you found. If there was some interest in pursuing this 41C and a half versus 41, we'd want to hear about that because there might be a longer lead time on implementing a program like that. So doesn't mean that it has to be done. We just want to hear back on your progress too. And you should, I would also just say that you can come to the select board almost at any time. If there's something that's coming up that you want to explore further, you're struggling, I'll be here as a liaison also as a member of the select board, but that doesn't preclude you from asking to come to the select board at other times. The rest of this does go into the membership that we were looking for the committee, and you're all here because you meet some of the criteria for the membership composition that we were looking for. As I mentioned, there are some people that you're likely going to have to go and outreach to get another perspective on this issue, but you're more than capable of finding some of those contacts. I have some contacts too. And the only final comment I'll say is that we do want to, there are a lot of people interested in this topic. I don't see it, well, Linda Escobedo's here, but you may have members of the public. You should allow public comment for your committees. And public comment today was deliberately at the end of this meeting because we want to get everybody level set on this committee. But in the future, that's up to the chair to decide, so. Okay. Any questions on the charter? Charter, I keep calling it charter, it's a charge. Sorry, thanks, Lynn.
I'll jump in with one. Are there any resources available to the committee? Should the committee be interested in survey design, survey implementation, and data analysis?
So let me just talk about resources first. One is, Meredith is here.
Yes.
Meredith is your resident SME on everything tax assessment. I am going to comment, we don't know exactly when you're going to choose to meet next. I will say the assessor's office has some limitations on evening meetings. So we're going to try to be very selective on using Meredith's time. So one of the things the chair will need to do is sort of coordinate heavily with Meredith if there's certain topics that we need her expertise for. Andrea's here tonight to help us with the technology, but I'm hoping, as other task forces do, that this committee will be pretty self-sufficient from an administrative perspective. If there is something that comes up that you want to try to pursue and it may require some funding, I'll be at the meeting, and so I'll be your conduit, but we'll ultimately have to talk to the town manager about any additional resources on that.
I did have a question. Well, I think in resources, I mean, it seems to me that some surveys might be useful. I've got experience in survey design, but it costs money to field them, and it costs money to have somebody look over your shoulder to be sure they're done professionally. One thing that always bothered me when I heard all the presentations, and I just wanted to know if this is a done deal that we can include it, is the issue of affordability in the sense of including income in any of the RTE just off the table because it's not allowed by the state?
Help me understand, what do you mean?
If, right now, it's about your house value assessment.
Yep.
And that is, we think directionally it's the same, goes up with income,
yeah,
the assessment
yep.
goes up. But there probably are exceptions, and at least that's what I've heard a lot from people saying, this is not fair for
Yep.
that reason. Is it off the table completely to include income in some manner in the RTE?
At this point, it would be, I think, because it's not local, you cannot do a local income tax under state law at the moment.
No, I don't think income
I think
tax, I meant,
Meredith will probably speak to this, but I believe
I
that.
meant consideration of income, the way it is in the senior means test.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's what I meant. I didn't mean income tax, no.
Yeah,
You
not
don't
that
need
I
that.
know of. It's statutory law that we
That's,
have to
so that's what I
follow.
heard, and I just wanted to confirm that
And
that's
I
off
don't
the
think you
table.
can locally adopt that.
Okay.
But I
Thank you.
can ask the Department of Revenue, I can ask,
Yeah.
to see
And they're
if
gonna say no.
there's some, but I don't believe so.
But I think that's one of the limitations that I keep having to tell myself.
Right.
To that point, I presume that we are looking at developing criteria to evaluate the RTE as currently designed, not any adjustments to it, correct?
Correct. I actually don't think we can adjust it.
Exactly.
I think that's the
So
challenge, but Meredith will ask. Yeah, you're right.
But we will also be evaluating it in the context of the other exemption programs or the other affordability programs that exist. So I
But
think,
am I not correct, Meredith, that the town has some flexibility in the percentage it wants to use?
It could use 1% and it could go up to 35%.
Yeah, I was looking, Somerville's at 35, Waltham's at 35.
Yeah.
So there are some that use higher numbers.
And some that use much lower, too.
It used to only be 20 and they raised it to 35.
I guess, what does that have on the bearing of the criteria that we'd utilize?
It doesn't. I think it's just informational about the parameters of the tax exemption program per se. Ours is 10%, has been.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, I think it might be, would it be off the table for us to say, do a different percentage, lower, higher, or should we just
The
look at the 10%?
select board is
It's
the
up to
people
them.
that vote that in at the classification
We're just looking
hearing,
at
so
the
you could
10%.
suggest it.
So what
So it sounds like our first job is to evaluate the existing program,
Yes,
determine whether we find it effective to meet the need that it's been laid out to do. And then, based on our finding there, we could make a recommendation which could involve some of these other
Perhaps, I mean, it
Options,
might be
perhaps.
part of what what I'm guessing is, when you're doing your analysis, you might say, wow, at that percent, nobody gets any other relief programs, I'm making it up. But if it was lower, I don't know, maybe they'd be eligible for additional programs or something like that. I would want your initial analysis to suggest there's a reason to go look further if we needed to. Yeah.
I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear on.
Oh,
Sorry, I want to make sure I'm crystal clear on the charter here.
Yeah.
There is one objective would be, what are the criteria that the select board should utilize to evaluate the effectiveness of the RTE going forward, right? That's one potential objective. I just want to clarify what our charter is. Another potential objective our charter is for us to evaluate how effective the RTE is in achieving its objectives. Is it the latter?
Actually, so the goal.
Or is it something different altogether?
Let me see if I can say it again. So the goal for the select board the goal behind the RTE was to support economic diversity and allow elderly residents to live in Concord. That's the goal.
Yeah.
The question is, can you, using the data for the current implementation, is there a way to measure whether that goal is being achieved?
Okay.
It's not a metric to do it.
Question mark, right? It's a
Yes.
big question mark, whether
Yes.
the data exists that allow us to answer that
Yes,
question.
yes.
So that will be part of the discussion we would have.
That's the big complexity.
Yeah.
Correct. Right.
Other comments or questions? I guess I'd like to go back to that initial statement and understand what the select board means by economic diversity. I'm all about definitions, so let's,
I knew it. Okay, so let me just comment. This was a statement from the minutes from 2 years ago when the select board actually adopted the real estate tax exemption. So to me, so this is where I think we might have to, you may all want to sort of define what you think it means. And I know Mary Hartman is here. Oh, sorry, I just pulled my neck. If you want to add anything around economic diversity, because you were here when the board voted in the real estate tax exemption. Do you want to make any comments relative to what the board was thinking about relative to economic diversity in the board?
First of all, I should introduce
No,
myself.
sorry.
That's okay, I'm just sitting in the back here. My name is Mary Hartman, I'm the chair of the select board. You put me on the spot here to
I know,
speak for
I
the
know.
board. I can't speak for the board. I think we use our common sense to figure out how we would measure economic diversity. You could measure it by wealth, you could measure it by income. It's, to me, those would be the two things. Is it your net wealth or is it your annual income? You decide.
I mean, that's an interesting response because we don't really have data by household on income or
Exactly.
assets.
Yeah.
So that's,
We do not know.
Yeah.
Assessed value of their real estate.
Exactly.
So you,
Can't
I'm sorry, I
make
don't want
that
to get involved.
assumption.
I'm just really
It's
here to
okay.
observe.
No, it's okay. But your perspective is important relative to
To the
initiation.
chart.
Risky
Yes.
assumption
So,
to make.
as Wendy said earlier, some of it's gonna be what data is available to you.
Right.
Right? So.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that not having, we don't know household wealth, number one.
Right.
And we certainly don't know anything about income. So those are, the diversity and it's difficult to define, and affordability is going to be, I don't know, I'm skeptical that we can go there.
Yeah.
But I think that what I'm kind of thinking about is the next piece, which is, and I don't think it should, it says elderly, but I know plenty of young rep families that struggle too. Elderly residents to continue living in Concord. So I think there's kind of a scenario planning here of like, why do people move? And what's the impact of the tax, the real estate tax? Because I think that it might be a component, but it might not be it might be a part of a decision, but I'm not sure that's the driver.
I had that reaction to that phrase. I had the same reaction to asking us to come up with a real estate transactions model. There are lots of factors that
Exactly.
affect people's decision-making to come in or to leave the town
Exactly.
at different ages and different life stages, right?
You know, from my little tiny sample of friends, it's, widower needs to go into assisted living, so moves with her daughter, to her daughter. It's sometimes there's a trigger point where you make a decision and, your discretionary income's part of it and taxes are part of it. So I think there's a lot going in. And I think it makes it interesting, but it also makes it, I'm a little humble about being able to prove anything. I'm not sure I'll be able to prove anything, but we might have some insights.
The only other thing that I'll add, Lynn, is that diversity was housing diversity in the housing stock. I mean, there's been some comments about losing smaller homes because people can't afford them when they leave, that, you know, that larger houses get built, so you end up having a different type of homeowner. That's the only other comment I'll make about diversity. That's a little tricky to measure, too.
But I want to point out something that's important to differentiate and not to judge a book by its cover. The price of a house and the market value of a house is not the assessed value of a house. So keep in mind that if you're looking at a house that you think, oh, that would sell for a high price, it's not always in line with the assessed value. The assessor's office tries to, over time, get that in check with the sale price, but if a property hasn't sold for many, many years, the assessment could go up or stay the same depending on the situation, how many times they go to the town office to do work on the house, if it's never, has the assessor been inside the house to see the improvements? So there's a lot of factors in what the formula is for the assessors and how current the assessment is. And I have to tell buyers this all the time and sellers this all the time, but, and the market value, that when I go in and do an opinion of value for somebody who wants to sell their house and they're thinking about what, you know, the motivation to move and how much might they get from that. Those are two different numbers, often quite different. So we can't always judge the book by its, you know, the assessed value.
And the assessed values are always 2 years in the rears of today's value, just to keep that in mind. It's not today's values, it's 2 years ago.
Our policy is to reassess every 3 years, is that right?
Every year we assess, but it's always 2 years in the rear.
Okay, all right.
24 sales are generating 26 values. 23 sales are generating 25 values.
Interesting.
Always 2 years in the rear.
Okay. Another real estate assumption we tend to make is that people living in large homes with large properties are wealthy, and people living in small homes with small plots are less wealthy. And I would suggest that we're probably going to have to check that assumption, right? I suspect there are people who are living in small, more modest homes who don't need the residential tax exemption. And vice versa, there may be people living in large homes who've lived there for 30 or 40 years and whose income perhaps doesn't match the value of their property now. So that was another
Yes,
assumption.
An example of that is where we've seen in the last few years when the mortgage rates went way up. Many people in larger homes or more expensive homes, or perceived, you know, maybe it would sell for a high price, couldn't downsize traditionally what we think of as going to a smaller home of smaller value. They were staying put, and it sort of gave us this gridlock of sales, of not enough inventory, because they weren't going to be able to get that mortgage rate again. So then it was not really financially downsizing. So just, there's lots of factors in this.
Or they had no mortgage, perhaps, right? Like, if you've lived in your house 30 years, you don't have a mortgage right now, and then you go to
Yeah,
downsize.
not having a mortgage was,
Yeah.
you know, is obviously better than taking
Yeah,
on a mortgage at
exactly. 7%.
some of the high percentages that we saw, so.
And I think we're not gonna know if you're a resident of Concord or not. I think some of the data will show us how many people aren't taking advantage of this and why. There could be seniors that are residents of Florida, New Hampshire. So they're priced, they don't qualify, but they need the help. So, like, it's an interesting, it's the same thing. You can't assume just because you live in Concord Green or anywhere that you don't have money. It's a choice where you live. You can choose. Sometimes you can't, but sometimes you can. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see the data on how many people.
That's true. You can only get one exemption. If you get one in Florida, you can't get one here. You know, you get one in New Hampshire, you can't get one here.
Following on Ellen's comment about younger families struggle financially as well, what's the history on why the focus here was on elderly residents?
I think it was because we were hearing from several elderly residents who were saying that they needed to leave because they can't afford to stay. And there were many comments along those lines. And I'm speculating because I wasn't here on the select board then, but I heard a lot of that. I don't know.
Could I just ask the question, maybe Meredith knows the answer? Resident, I am assuming, means that you are resident for tax and voting purposes in
Correct.
Massachusetts.
Yeah. You
May have
vote
a
from
second
Concord.
You may have a second home, but you gotta be here at least 6 months a year.
You have
And you
to
have to pay-
file
and
taxes
you have to
from your
file
primary
taxes.
domicile.
That's your test,
Yes,
is,
that's the test.
do you file mass state income tax?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Clearly, lots of nuance, lots of interesting angles as we start to tease this apart, right? And lots of good minds around the table.
And I think one of the things is that, what are the reasons people come? We don't know who doesn't come, so, but what are the reasons people feel they have to leave? And it could be, I've heard this, gridlock, I can't afford to refinance, even though I really would like to downsize, but it's, I do know people who live in small houses who don't need it, don't need the tax, so they've downsized purposely. So it's almost like we need just to be able to define different cohorts or scenarios, whatever word you want to use, and then see what data we have to begin to put a little bit of flesh around these groups. Because I think it's not going to be, I think it's going to be really hard to make generalizations.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see things like, if you look at the profile of the people that we're trying to benefit, what percentage of them are actually benefiting from this program? And what percentage what percentage are using and benefiting versus what percentage of people who we're not necessarily targeting are benefiting? And I think that'll be some good cohort analysis that we can do.
I hope, once we get a better understanding of how the program currently works,
Yeah,
and I'm going
yeah,
to turn
yeah.
to you in a minute, Meredith, I hope that we'll be able to build a table of hypotheses,
Yeah, exactly.
who are the stakeholders, they're groups of stakeholders I hadn't even considered before. So let's get that out on the table. And then let's talk through what are the potential impacts on people's decisions to leave, on people's decisions, excuse me, to apply for the means-tested exemption. Anyway, we can throw a series of possible effects.
That would be really, I think, a great
And
brainstorming
then we
session.
figure out what data we need to test each of
Do we
those.
have it?
And do we have them?
Can we use it?
You can.
So you can get the RTE and the senior means and like all of
You
these,
can,
like
and what
Anna Hugh Cargo,
happens is-
so you can.
We don't want to kick you out of important ones, because sometimes you may get accepted for 1 year, and then you made too much money because you got all these exemptions, so we ask you to review it with your accountant to make sure it doesn't hurt you to get certain ones. Too many may be, not beneficial. That's why they chose 275 cap on the senior means tested, so people don't get hurt. Benefit 1 year, not benefit the next.
So if there aren't further questions for Wendy in terms of the select board's charge to us, I would suggest that we move to Meredith.
To the website.
Awesome.
Okay, we're going to review the assessing website. And to get on the assessor's website, we want to click on government. You want me to get?
No, it's okay.
Okay. You want to click on government, and then you want to hover over government.
This assumes everybody
Yeah.
knows the town
And then,
website, right?
and then in departments 2 down is assessing, and then you want to scroll down. When you see in red and gold the residential exemption information application, you want to click on that. And then it states right in the front, if you filed and received the residential exemption in FY '24, you do not need to apply for '25. You just apply once, and until, if it keeps getting continued, you're automatically enrolled in the program. And how you can check is to check on your 3rd and 4th quarter bill, and you'll see if you received the exemption, just to make sure. You look at your bill, you'll look in the middle, and it will show you got the credit. If you don't see it in there, you need to, call the treasurer collectors to see if they're processing it, or come down and we can see and help you apply. You have till April 1st, if you've never applied, to still apply. The second part is a residential exemption PowerPoint presentation that I gave to the Select Board September 30th. And it will walk you through, if you click on that at one point, and want to see the presentation that I had given. The next step is if you own and live in your property as a primary resident, you may qualify for the exemption. And that's filing taxes from the property showing that this is your domicile. And that's the eligibility. An application requirement is required. You have to apply. It's not automatic. If you don't apply, you don't get it. And then can you keep scrolling?
Meredith, remind us the application involves what, submission of what kind of information?
So click right on that red application. Does that one do it? Yeah, and it comes right on. It actually, you can fill it in and email it right to our office. And if you have trouble saying what's your parcel ID, we'll fill it in. You know, what's your book, the day you bought it, we have all that information. So as long as you have the main information, if you're the owner of your property, you know, then we can fill in the rest and then attach the primary, your income tax showing that you vote in, you know, that you file from that area.
So there is a copy of the front page of the income, of the
The front
tax
page of the
return.
1040,
Yeah.
and then you can redact or black out or whatever way, mask, and we don't want to see your income, we don't want to see what you made, we don't need any social securities, we don't want any private information, we just want to see that's the address you filed from. And the timing's everything, so you still have time. April 1st is the last day for FY '25 to get this residential exemption in if you haven't applied. And anywhere you click on in red is the application again, and you can hand deliver it to our office, you can mail it, and if you don't know how to fill it out, you're still a little confused, we can't fill it out for you, but the Council on Aging can. We can guide you and step you through it, but we can't fill it out and give you an abatement. It's just against, you know, code. But we can guide you through it. But they're very well seasoned over at the Council on Aging to help anybody that needs to have any exemption filled in.
What type of educational materials, if any, went out to individuals around the exemption?
It's all on this website.
So you have to be able to access the website and read it, for example?
Or they can come in. I mean,
Yeah, but I'm just
actually
saying, like, if
brought-
you aren't aware, if you're a senior individual living in Concord and don't frequent, like, I'm thinking of, my grandparents don't live here, but like,
Yeah.
live in Concord, would they
So
be
it's
aware
really a
of this?
state statute, and wherever they live, do they live in Massachusetts?
No, I'm not concerned about my grandparents per
Okay.
se, I'm just saying, like, if my
Other
grandparents lived in Concord, how would they have known about this as 89-year-old? You know, like, how would they know?
Pretty much word of mouth, going
That's what I
on.
was
Your
assuming.
accountant should really inform you. I mean, you pay them to do your taxes, they should inform you. A lot of accountants don't inform people.
That's why I
on
was
the
curious,
citizen
like, are we
circuit breaker.
actually, are people getting this information who need it the
It was
most, is the
written in the
question.
paper.
Yeah, okay, so
In
if
the
you read the
local-
bridge.
It's in the bridge, we,
Okay.
it's the bridge to, we put it out there, we.
The Council on Aging, obviously, so I was just
Yeah.
curious, like, where people are accessing this.
Oh,
I don't know if we put it, the residential exemption in the tax bill, so everybody.
Okay, there you go, that's what I was curious about,
That's
like,
an
how are
idea that we
people?
could put it in, we may hit too many homes, but it's a thought, you know?
Yeah, I was just curious where people are accessing this if they're not seeking it out.
The Council on Aging does help
Okay.
a lot.
Okay, great,
So
thank you.
this video is created by the Department of Local Services, the Commonwealth, and it explains exactly how the residential exemption works. It is 15 minutes. At your own time and leisure. But it will show you the actual math, how it works, the structure of it, every inch of it, and it's excellent. So at one point for 15 minutes, it's worth clicking on and watching.
Well, you just saved yourself, because I was gonna ask you to walk us through the math.
Yeah,
Because I
it's-
saw, I saw your PowerPoint.
It
Yeah.
walks you right through the math, and it really explains everything. It's
Okay.
perfect.
All right.
So then, where are we here? We hit the deadlines and that. So the next is the exemptions. senior exemptions.
So now you're
The
talking,
Tax exemptions,
Other ones, okay.
So if you hit exemption information, right?
yeah,
that what you meant?
so the senior, one more, yes, and then the tax exemptions. So this explains all of the exemptions we have that's available, and Concord decided to match it, so it's great. So it used to be 400 for veterans, now it's 800. Dick Krug is the veteran agent. He can help any veteran fill it out. He's very well seasoned of helping them. We also have an article coming out to help the HERO Act, and that's
Warrant
great.
article, just a-
Yeah, warrant articles out there, and then we go down to the 41C. And we only have a few that qualify for that because it's very minimal income and assets, but it's up to $1,000, and it's very helpful, and the senior centers can help them. And then if you click on the 41C, anything in red is the application. We also have, if somebody wanted to defer their taxes, if they were having such a tough year, you can defer it. A lot of people don't want to lien on their home, but for a couple of years, if it happens, if they qualify and the bank's okay if there's a mortgage, or if there's no mortgage, they can defer it. And Concord adopted 4%. So it's only 4% interest opposed to 8 it used to be. So that was a nice benefit as well.
Wow.
Meredith, who sets the income levels for the 41C exemption?
The state.
The state?
The
does.
state sets all
That's
of
interesting.
that, yeah. All of this is mandated by the state. Most of these are state statutory exemptions. The senior means tested, which we'll go into that, was a home rule petition, and that is a match of if you qualify for the circuit breaker, you can qualify for the senior means tested exemption, but Concord locally adopted 275,000. You can't have more than that as assets because there's so many that you can qualify, it can hurt you. So we always advise ask your accountant before you apply for which ones, and make sure you talk to the Council on Aging if they help you fill it out, and we'll look at it. Each application's different depending on what people have. You know, how much they have, how many assets they have, and, you know, some qualify for a lot of it, but you have to make sure if you don't get kicked out next year, and those are the fine lines you have to look into.
275 is liquid assets? Yeah, I assume
Yeah, it's not including your principal
Your
resident,
residence,
it's
okay.
also including your car, you
Who
know,
includes your car?
401K, CDs, IRAs, it's including all of that.
And Meredith, oh, yeah, never mind. You went by 41C, but the 41C and a half, which we've not adopted. that
So the
information is-
41C and a half, it's either or, and there was a big report that I could send and you review it. We've done a lot of research into that, but it's either or with the residential exemption, or that you can't have all of them. So we could send a report where you could review it, but it only helps seniors, it doesn't help everyone. And the select board wanted to look to see who they could help more than just one. They wanted to help everyone, so that's the one they chose. And then, yeah, so the information, all of the application, all of the requirements are all under those tabs. I also wanted to go under the tabs, documents by years. Those are all by fiscal years. You want to go down to FY25. And then you want to scroll down to all of our classification notification, the PowerPoint that I gave November 18th, which was the classification hearing. And then the other three was the ResCom review, the condo review. All of those are the assessed values for this year. If you were interested in seeing all of them, they're all on there as well. So this slideshow is available on our website, and starting at page, is it 13? Is one of the votes that the select board votes at the classification hearing, whether to adopt the residential exemption is one of the questions. So that's the first. Then the next page is just showing the Mass General laws of what it is and when it was acted on. And what happens is the residential class is the only one that's affected here. And who's affected is higher value homes and owners that are not occupied, that don't live in the homes, like rentees, or someone that owns multifamilies or owning more than one property, including apartments and vacant land. They would still be affected. They wouldn't be able to qualify, but they would be part of the people that couldn't, and the tax rate raises.
If someone owns a multifamily and they live there, they would qualify.
They would qualify,
If
yes.
they qualify.
Yes. They would have to own and live in it,
Yeah,
and,
but for the whole, whatever the property is,
yes.
yeah.
And so the,
Would the other, would the other people though in the property, the cost, the taxes on the overall property, it's a 5-unit property and they live in 1 unit, what would happen to the taxes on the overall property? Would it be one portion of the unit that would be?
no, the whole entire property would get the exemption.
Okay.
And it's up to the homeowner if they wanted
Yeah.
to, if the other people were renting, to up their rent, but if he gets the exemption, then he benefits, or she.
But there's not, that's one of the questions, is whether somebody's, if their real estate tax goes down, whether that's passed on. If somebody rents a house, lives in a.
It doesn't
family.
matter what they could.
But no, if their real estate tax went down because they got the exemption, there's nothing, what they do with it is the
Yeah.
landlord's decision.
They can
Oh, it's
set
a
they can
landlord's
set their
decision,
rent to
yeah,
any
the owner
point.
of the
Yeah,
property
yeah.
that gets the exemption, whatever they want to
Mhm.
do.
Yeah.
And so the next slide really explains
interesting.
everything. So the residential tax exemption, the factor can go from 1% to 35%, and it's the total average residential parcel value. The property must be a primary domicile of the owner who uses it for income tax purposes. The option exempts only within the residential class of the property. It does not change the levy, and it does not change or impact commercial, industrial, or personal property. It only affects residential. The select board can authorize up to 35% of the residential exemption, and right now, out of 351 communities, 18 communities get it, and the 18 are on the side. There's some with the little caret that shows up, that means they increased it from the year before. The residential exemption is a fixed value reduction off of the assessment for qualified taxpayers, meaning all qualified taxpayers receive the same amount subtracted from their assessed value. And the assessed value for the exemption is a percentage of the average residential value of the community.
So it's the average rental of everybody, or only those who apply?
Of everybody in the residential.
So everybody in the residential, even if they don't apply, you take the average,
Yes,
and that's what you
the
get the number.
average, yeah, and the
And then if you-
average here was 1,443,378, and the select board voted 10%, so the exemption was 144,338. At the time, 3,870 qualified, and then the total residential value was 558, 588, 60. That was minused from the total value, and that's what needed to be raised. So the tax rate would have been $12.39, but it's $13.26 to raise the monies to redistribute the exemption.
And does that tax rate then, the higher tax rate, go to everybody who then doesn't apply or qualify?
Correct.
So they get a higher value and they get a higher tax rate?
Same with apartments, same with everything, yes. So then, not this one, the next one. So on this 10% pretty much shows the impact. So 10% was 144,338 came off the assessed value. Anybody under the break-even point, which was like 2,000,003, anybody under that benefited in the red to the right. Anybody over the 2,300,000 picked up the burden. So the higher value your home is, the higher you got taxed and took the shift of the burden.
So maybe I should know this, but the 144 was the amount that everyone qualified was reduced
Everyone.
their assessed value. So that benefited people who have a lower value home a lot more than people who are
And
close.
higher value homes could apply and still get it, but they still picked the burden up of the increase. So you still could get it, but you still got the burden.
But also,
What you got was less than the burden.
Less than the
above
burden,
2.5.
exactly.
If it wasn't your
Exactly.
primary residence,
You get
it would go up even more.
Correct. A lot of people live, in Florida, New Hampshire, what have you, and this is their second home, and they would pick up the burden, yeah.
but that higher tax rate, Meredith, applies to all.
Yeah.
To everybody,
property
yes.
classes.
That's what raises, the rate raises to fund this residential exemption. It's funding it within the residential class.
So there are data available from the Department of Revenue that show
So
you the
if you
tax
watch
rate.
that video, it's perfect.
Yeah,
And it will give you a clear picture of exactly how they do it.
but I was gonna say, we can put that rate in context to other cities and towns around us.
Everywhere, yeah,
Yeah.
it's how it's worked in Massachusetts, correct, yeah.
And keep in mind though that this residential tax rate, other communities tax residential and commercial different.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that has an impact on how, so you can't just compare residential across all the communities.
Is that a select
Oh,
board
is
thing to
that-
decide, who decides that?
The select board at the classification hearing, if there'll be a split.
But you
rate.
could say you'd-
Commercial base, but many other towns do, so the amount of taxes can be more, much more so on the commercial.
But we don't have it.
We don't have, no, we don't
We
have
don't
these.
have
So you're saying another town with
Some,
a
we
large
just-
commercial base can lower their residential tax because they're,
Yes.
it's
yes.
another way of
It's
lowering
just-
residential
just be
tax
careful
burden.
when you pick
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
They're not all the same. that's
Yeah,
all.
so the
Yeah.
No, but if
commercial
I'm looking
tax
to buy
rate
a
in
house-
Concord
It's
is
still the
12.39.
value.
If I'm looking to buy a house and I'm looking at,
Yep.
sorry,
The residential.
too many of us talking?
Give you a gavel.
So, it says 1324, ours is 1326, and the difference is funding the senior means tested, because we split that on the residential and fund it through there. So there's the 2 cents difference.
Yeah, so that's what was gonna be my question a little bit, is on that. So you set the levy, we have to raise the money. So then someone has, so like, if you get a senior means test, you don't pay the taxes. It's not a lien, it's not a balance due. So we still have to raise that
We
money.
raise it through
So
the tax
even
rate.
in a regular year, you would have to redo the tax rate
Yeah.
for those that apply for senior means,
And right now, only 34 qualify, so.
for
it-
any of the senior
for
means.
the
So
senior
it
means,
doesn't
so
move the
it's
needle.
2 pennies.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
It could move the needle, though.
It could move the needle, but as of now, that's what is.
Good.
Yeah. So then, the next slide, I don't know if that was it. Was that it for that? That one was it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, all of our web pages have all the exemptions. It's very informative. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We even have historical tax rates on there, only up to about 5 or 6 years, but we do have it back to the 1950s in our office if you needed, to research that. We do have it. Our annual reval and property values are on there, classification hearing presentations, abatement information, exemption information. We are contacted by many communities to ask how our website is so great, how we do it. You know, they ask us all these questions, so if you have any questions, ask us. Sometimes there's so much information that we can guide you to find it.
Can I ask another question on some of these
Sure.
senior means stuff? So this is all state, set by the state, all these
The
income
senior means
classifications?
is all set by the state. It's copying the senior circuit breaker. So if you qualify for the circuit breaker, which is the CB form on your taxes, income taxes, then you qualify for this if you don't have any more than 275.
And does this go up every year with inflation and stuff?
They
The
do.
state
They
sets
do
this?
like a cost of living each year, yep, and they change, like we go on, the median value, and our median changes each year, yes.
And the Hugh Cargo Trust too, do they?
So that I'm not involved in, but we do have, we say to reach out to them and ask them, it
Separate,
is on
okay.
here, and, we also have, community preservation exemption too. There's also a water exemption and a light exemption that we like to tell people there is, but we don't know about it, so we send them to the right departments.
So the senior, the Hugh Cargill tax, the tax relief, the Hugh Cargill tax deliberately uses the same senior means tested criteria. What varies is the amount of relief. So right now, for this fiscal year, it's $325. It's gonna go per quarter. It's gonna go up for the next fiscal year to $400.
Yeah, that was gonna be my question. So is that also tied to
But it's
inflation
not,
somehow?
it's, the reason for that funding is that we do fundraising for that tax relief, so.
Right.
So it's pretty much dependent on that.
We meaning the select board.
No, not the
The
select
town.
board, the Hugh Cargill Trust will issue out a funding request to the community. Those funds are received and it's used for tax relief.
But I guess one point I drew from what you were telling us, Meredith, is that we don't have any flexibility to change the exemption requirements for the senior means tested program. That's set by the state.
It's set by the state. The only thing that's set by the Board of Assessors is the assets. And it was $250 back a couple of years ago, and they increased it to $275.
So we could say that you should make that $1 million and then.
Yep, you could recommend
So we
that.
could recommend, okay, so we can
So-
change the asset.
Or you can make no asset.
Right.
And just match it, you know, in full. There's a lot of different things you can locally adopt, but that's the only movement is on the assets.
Excluding housing.
Can
But
I
it does,
just-
sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. What's your ability to essentially slice and dice your database? For instance, if we wanted to do surveys at different valuation levels, or if we wanted to cross
All of
the
it's on the
census
website.
with census so that we could look at those over 65 versus
So it's
under
all on the
65.
website under the FY 2025, where she just dropped it down, where we showed the power presentation. Underneath is all of our information. It's called the ResCom review. Every single valuation, every single street listing home, and you can slice and dice it with the, on an
And
Excel sheet.
can we cross that with the town census?
That's something that, the census, I believe you can. It would be you doing it, you know, matching
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but
You
not.
should make a public
Yeah.
request to the town clerk.
You'd have
get
to,
it,
Yeah, okay.
because-
yeah.
Because the databases are all by
But all of
address.
ours is downloadable, ours goes right into
The
Excel.
town census
And it
would give
won't
us
be every 10
demographic
years, yeah.
information,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, but,
Except you
but
don't get kids, I discovered.
I wouldn't,
The kids under 18 are not in the.
it's not in the census? Oh, because
I
that
mean,
was one of
they're
my,
in the census, but they're not in the database. I don't know whether it's security or what, but,
oh, because that was one of the
so
questions.
anyhow,
Yeah.
if you looked at the database, you'd think everybody in Concord was over 18.
Interesting.
Fascinating.
Yeah, but
And
we,
there's actually two databases, right? There's one that's residential and condos, or there's. separate
Residential,
areas?
it's called
That's-
ResCom review, so residential and commercial, and the one underneath, it's condos only.
so if we wanted to combine those two data sets to get some kind of data demographics with the assessment, that might, because I don't think we can do it, that might be a request for resources
But that would give us what, number and age
Yeah.
of adult residents?
of the adults.
In theory, assuming that like the years, census is done not yearly.
Every, yeah, every
It's
10
done
years.
every year.
Oh, the
In
town
Concord it
census.
is?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Concord town census is. It's the
And that
thing you
one-
get in January every year,
Right.
Yeah.
the one with the dog license.
Right.
Oh, yeah,
That's the
forgot
one I
about
pay, so that's the one I noticed.
But that would be, that's to sort of figure out what the data is, you know, what
Yeah,
can we, then combining them is no easy feat.
No,
But the limitations of what are available are really
Very,
stark.
very high.
It is stark. You know,
You
we
know,
have
so in
to,
terms of quantitative data, my sense is that unless there's something we don't know about, it's gonna be hard to prove
Yeah.
affordability
I think
types of
so.
questions.
The way I'm thinking about this is really like an issue map, where we've got a big question that we're trying to ask. What are all the sub questions that we need to answer that big question, and then let's figure out the data that we need to answer those questions, unconstrained, and then we'll figure out what data we can and can't get, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
And it's all on our website, so it's very easy, accessible. We do have it, you can download it, it all goes into Excel.
Perfect. All right. Well, good, thank you, Meredith.
Thank you very much.
Other,
Welcome.
Just one quick question. I was surprised so few, only about 2/3 of the households showed as qualifying. Is that because people didn't apply? Or do we
have
know why?
4,002 as of today that applied,
Right.
and there's only 56.
So we're
So that's mostly,
25% didn't apply.
and they don't have this as a primary domicile, or they just don't want to. Some people just don't want to apply.
Okay.
There are a few that have, they just don't want to, for whatever reason, I don't know.
There's different kinds of properties too, right? There could be vacant properties. that are
Well, there's some
tenants,
people
or-
that just
No,
live
I'm
in their
just saying that,
property
you
and
know.
just don't.
Right, they're not all, this is the house. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Well,
There's a lot of properties, different types of properties that aren't, apartments and things of that
So
nature.
sorry, the denominator you gave was eligible or just properties? Eligible properties or properties?
All of that is all the properties.
All properties are
Eligible-
All properties, not just
Yeah,
eligible.
402 applied that's qualified, and the other ones, they may not be eligible.
They may not be eligible, okay, that's what I was trying to figure out.
4,002.
4,002 applied, 5,600. I just couldn't tell if that's 5,600 eligible properties or 5,600
Oh.
properties.
I think-
This-
No, that is eligible properties, I'm sorry,
Okay.
that is eligible, because there's
Oh,
like
yeah.
So there's
6,000
the difference.
something
Okay.
that is, yeah.
Okay.
Because that
So
would
there
include
are-
rental properties as an
Yeah.
example.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Exactly.
So there's
Yeah.
20, I don't know, we can do the math quickly, but 20-something percent of eligible properties who did not apply. Okay.
And the list of that have applied, is that publicly something that this committee can get by address?
I don't think so. If there is, I think it could be through the commitment book from the town that's public, where you could see that they got an exemption, but the applications are private. All of those are not public.
So there's no way to go to the 20% and ask why they didn't apply, because we don't know who they are.
You could you could back through it through the tax commitment book of seeing why, but the people that have not, that have reached out and asked, we're moving to Florida, it's going to be our domicile, so take us off next year because we're not staying, this will be our second home, it won't be our first, we're applying, we get a better exemption in Florida, you can't get two. It's one or the other, and wherever you file.
It's actually 29%. I just was trying to figure out how, it's a lot.
All right, well, thank you.
And there's a lot of people that own more than one property too. People own 5 and 6 and 7, you only can get it on one.
Right.
In town, you mean, or?
Yes. Yep, just to, remember those type of things.
Yeah, so just because the property's eligible doesn't mean the person is eligible.
That's
Those are
right.
different units of measurement.
They'd have to live there and it'd have to be their domicile. And it can't be a wife lives on one of the properties and a husband lives in the other and they both stay in one house and not, we don't, it's where you file from.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay.
And that all factors in.
ADUs are part of the property, so you can live in the ADU or you can live in the primary house, but as long as you're on that particular lot, you're eligible.
You get one tax bill.
You get
You
one.
get one exemption.
Right.
Wherever you live, on that property.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
very much, Meredith.
Feel free to email or call, and any of my staff is very helpful and eligible in this as well.
Thank you.
Well, we've got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, for sure, a lot of thinking to do.
I think we need to talk about schedules.
So then I want to just point something out in this view, but on the back of your agenda is a table. You all gave me your availability on a general basis. Just a Monday through Friday kind of thing, if it helps. So it just might help to pick the next meeting or. there's no perfect answer there either.
No, there isn't.
Yeah,
There isn't,
right.
Sorry.
Do some committees rotate, morning and evening, or is
I
that
don't
too
know. I mean,
complicated?
there's, no, well, I think you can do whatever you want to do. It doesn't have to be fixed.
I mean, A, this is complicated, but then also B, how frequently are we going to meet? We have a lot of work to do, and I assume we have a lot of homework to do outside of committee meetings. We need to think about that.
Yeah, I mean, today's meeting was more just level setting,
Yeah,
and so I assume the next meeting's a little bit more about brainstorming, planning.
Looks like we've got two members who can only do evenings, so maybe we start there and see if we get a match with, you know, who can do a particular evening.
I can make a day work if I have enough notice, or a morning, like before 10.
Same.
I work full-time, so, you know, but if I know ahead of time, I can just go in late or work from home. And
Yeah, I said afternoons, but mornings are just, you know, I'm open to what, I'm
I don't
really
want
open
every-
to people who have constraints
Yeah.
to accommodate that.
I'm happy to be flexible. I prefer not every meeting be in the day, but I don't mind a random meeting in the day.
I mean, Light Board used to meet, when, at 7:30?
7:30?
Yeah. Which I liked when I was working, because I could get it out of the way and then get on to work. 7:30 to 9 was my memory.
Well, I put 8, but I could do 7:30 too. It's not a problem.
Yeah, I could certainly do in the morning, that would be fine.
Mornings are my toughest, but you know, depends
I
when
know,
it
that's
is.
the problem.
I just have a husband that travels and I have to do a drop and
For
then
kids, yeah.
my work day. So work, I'm very flexible, but with the kid drop and the husband traveling, it's like, you know,
Yeah.
depends which morning and depends which week.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
If we know ahead of time, I
Yeah.
can figure something out.
I was gonna say the same thing. My husband drops our kids off in the morning, but I'm pretty flexible. I work from home all the time, so, because my university's in Oregon.
So you're really free in the morning.
I work East Coast hours, but like my boss is never looking to meet with me at 9 a.m.
So, yeah.
Eastern, yeah.
Let alone at 7.
Definitely not 7:30. So, but yeah, I can be flexible with enough notice. I'm on a couple other evening committees that meet in the evening, but they meet like once a month on the whatever day. You know, it's like, so I can move things around pretty easily.
And will we be able to do, to Zoom in if we're not in town?
Yeah, I would assume we can. Standard these days.
I mean, that,
7:30 a.m. is a rough in-person meeting. You met in person at 7:30?
yeah, back in the day.
Could Zoom.
There will be times when I'm not here and I'm not going to be Zooming in, because I'll be traveling for personal reasons, so we all have those constraints, I'm sure.
Is monthly reasonable to be meeting and also then subcommittee meetings? Because we'll be breaking into smaller research groups.
We're gonna have to break into smaller groups, right? We're gonna have to assign out.
Easier with, I'm thinking if we set up some monthly, we all are together, but have these subcommittees break up soon.
Yeah, and that gets me thinking about open meeting laws. So a
Yeah.
quorum in this group is 4, presumably?
Your quorum is 4, so
Right.
anything less than 4 is okay.
Okay.
As a subcommittee.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I think an initial meeting, maybe 2 meetings in which, John's saying, like, come up with the questions, the issues, and then, you know, in the perfect world, what would we need for information and what can we find, and then have people break up and figure out, where can I get, what I can't get, and then come back and meet. Because I think, I at least find that large meetings, when you're trying to decide things, there's like, you know, brain makes my brain hurt. That it's easier if it's a smaller group.
My gut is we should schedule the next meeting for 2 weeks from now, because I don't
Fine,
want us to
sure.
lose too much momentum and mental organization. But then maybe switch to a monthly thing with smaller groups
Yeah,
meeting
yeah.
when they need to.
Sounds good.
I'm of course on vacation the entire week, 2 weeks from now for our kids' spring break, but.
Rich, is it you? Somebody was away.
I'm away the end of March.
Like the
Yeah, I'm
15th to
away
the
the end of
20th.
March too.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe that week isn't gonna work.
Just away when?
I'm away the 15th to the 21st for my kids' spring break.
Oh, spring break, oh.
They go to Neshoba Brooks.
No, I'm so unaware because my kids are out completely of the school system.
It's not the common schedule for spring break.
And
I'm
I'm,
away the 24th to the 2nd of April for a daddy-daughter trip with my 45-year-old.
Aw.
Oh, that's.
I want to
so-
get in on the daddy-daughter trip in your 40s.
So how does April 3rd look for our
April
next
3rd.
meeting?
What day of the week is that?
I can't do that night.
I'm gonna be away.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think
gotta-
we're all
We're
gonna
Fundraising
have this.
gala.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to miss
I'm
me.
here the weeks between, but not then.
I could do Tuesday, and the week of the 24th. The next week is the week before Easter. Oh, no, 2 weeks.
Yeah,
I could do the 24th if we want, and I'll leave until the evening.
yeah, I'm not here that week.
Could we
So
do?
31, 1 or 2?
Yep, and yep.
Two, I could,
2. I can
squeeze in
do.
before I fly out.
31 and 1.
If it's in the morning, two. The second or the first is fine.
The first is good.
The
I'm
first
open
is
all.
good.
I can't do the first.
I can't do that one.
All right, the second you could do in the morning or in the evening?
I have a 4 o'clock international flight, so. I have
Yeah, it would have to be morning, but you're gonna be packing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not ideal. There's a lot of other days that are more ideal, but I could figure that out, so.
I could figure out the morning of the second.
Is Thursday the 3rd out?
She's flying out.
She's been gone, she's gone.
Oh, okay.
And Monday, the 31st, I know is a select board, we'd have to do it in the morning.
I could do Monday morning. I could do Monday morning.
I can do the 31st.
I can do Monday morning,
I
yes.
can do Monday morning.
Monday morning, the 31st?
Perfect.
What time morning?
8?
8.
8 a.m.
Here? Is this?
Well, that's the next question, is figuring out where we can meet.
No, Andrea, March 31st at 8 in the morning.
Do we have a room that has, like, we can put up flip charts or, you know, if we're gonna do brainstorming, write things?
In the future, we should get that. Is this the most convenient place, or should we be trying to meet over at the assessor's building?
I would stick in a bigger room. I don't think the assessors have a bigger room.
Oh, okay.
So this one is available on the website.
All right, well, so next meeting, let's do the 31st at 8 in the morning here.
Okay, sounds good.
And then I would like to suggest we do it again 2 weeks from then, and then switch to a more flexible schedule.
And when is
Okay,
2
two meetings
weeks,
down
April
south.
Yeah,
13th,
yeah.
April 14th, 14th?
Could we do the 14th, morning or evening?
I can.
Okay.
I think it's gotta be morning, because the evening is one of the
Oh,
town
public
meeting
hearings?
hearings.
Yeah.
Works, 14th works for me.
All right, let's snag those for now.
Sounds
8
good.
a.m.
8 a.m.?
If it's possible, could we do 8:15? Because I could drop my kids off first. If we can't, I will. They're right at Neshoba Brooks, so I'll like pop.
I'm
But
fine with
if
8.
not, I can be 5 minutes late.
8:15, fine with me.
If people don't mind, I didn't want.
On
I was,
both
like, waiting
times
for
or
every-
just this time?
8:15 for either of them would be ideal, but if people
For both
cannot,
Mondays?
if that's, if I
Yeah.
can, but if it's like gonna ruin people's
Yeah, no,
schedules,
no,
I can either
it's
have
all
my
of it-
husband
all of
drop
us
or I can
8:15 's
be
great.
6 minutes late.
8:15 is
I
great.
think I'll be here like 8:07, to be honest.
Yeah, depending upon parking.
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
no, don't get the traffic coming up.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, that's true.
It's true,
On a
going back
Mon-
into West
On
Concord,
a
it's
Monday,
easy.
though?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, that'd
That's
be
true,
great.
it should be slower on a Monday. I would say for the next meeting, we all come with our issues or our hypotheses or
Good idea.
our, potential effects listed out, and let's just throw them out at each other.
That's a good idea.
One way we've done this in the past is, people have probably done these sticky note exercises, right? So just bring your issues, we can then just try to aggregate them all together into
Yeah.
themes and go from there.
Yeah,
Yeah, right.
stakeholders and issues.
Yeah.
Read the assessor's website.
Yeah, exactly. That is a to-do, yes.
Try to really
Watch
understand
that
this.
video, 15 minutes.
Can I ask an open meeting question? If you're not here, can I send in my list of issues and stakeholders?
What do you mean? Yeah.
That-
You mean
that
if you
was-
can't make a meeting?
Yeah, because, I mean, I think our next meeting is very important. I'm sorry I can't be here, but I could, I think your suggestion about listing our issues and listing the stakeholders is a good idea. And I'm just wondering if it's possible to submit something in writing if you can't be here.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm,
absolutely.
yeah.
Do we have each other's email addresses? I know, Andrea, you've been in touch with us, and I haven't looked. Everybody's emails are there?
At least one email from you, at least, right?
put them in an email also.
Oh, that'd be great, yeah, yeah.
So are you moving to 8:30 on both?
8:15. Sorry, if that's okay. I'll be
Yes.
very timely. Really, I could do 8. I could make sure my
No, make it
husband just drops
8:15 so
those
you don't
things, but-
stress. 'Cause if you walk
8:15
in
is good.
stressed, that's not good.
Compromise, because there'll be payback at some point.
No, no.
8:15 makes it so I can be there and then here, hopefully, ideally.
All right.
Which means that we'll need an agenda and things posted, right? Because this will be a
Yes.
public meeting.
Yes, so Andrea will help us with, when we've decided what we need for an agenda, she can help us get it posted.
Okay, great.
Thank you, thank you.
Are we trying to keep the meeting to an hour, or is it, I just want to understand how much time I should.
That's a good question.
I think you need one in an hour too, first of all.
I would say an hour and a half,
That's what I
Mm-hmm.
would for.
but let's be diligent and keep it to that. People have
Well, I
things
think
to
if
do.
we have a process of having homework
Mm-hmm.
and reporting in, that it's much easier to share if people have thought about it a little bit and have
Yeah.
kind of figured out what they need, and then maybe some streams of thinking come together.
John, do you want to take the lead in facilitating that next meeting?
Sure.
Oh, that'd be great, John, thank you.
Yep.
That'd be great.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Is that the wind already?
Yeah,
Oh,
it
yes,
is.
it is, it is.
Wow.
It's not the rain, it's.
There go the yard signs.
I know, mine are already gone. I
probably
stuck them in
gone
the
right
snow, and then it bent everything, and then it was like, okay, they're not
Snow's
sticking
gone.
anymore.
Other questions, issues for now? Well, this is a great kickoff.
It's good to get
Got a
going on
lot
this.
to chew on.
Yeah, that'll work. So thank you all.
Yeah,
Appreciate it. And
thanks,
thank you,
Wendy.
Ben, for filling in.
So at the next meeting, we'll talk about the chair?
Yes, we will.
Okay. I'm very conscious of this hot potato, and you just toss it to me.
Oh, well, you know,
I saw
I thought that was really interesting.
You did a great job.
I'll do minutes,
meeting.
draft minutes from tonight.
Okay,
Usually they go to the, do you want them to go to you, or, I mean, obviously they have to be distributed.
I'm happy to look at them.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
Great.
I'll be done.
All right. Linda, you've been listening to us all this time, and we're slowly wrapping up. Did you have anything you'd like to contribute?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry I can't turn on my video at this point. Linda Escobedo, Wedgewood Common, former select board member and currently a member of the Affordable Housing Trust. I just want to thank all of you for serving on this committee, and I look forward to the work that you're going to be doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Anything else? If not, motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.